The room is darker than you expected. Only the faintest glow seeps through the cracks in the shutters. The air smells of oil and cooling clay. Outside, somewhere beyond the wall, a donkey stirs and a soft clatter of wooden wheels rolls over cobblestones. The first sound of morning in Alexandria. You lie still for a moment, listening to the muffled hum of the city coming alive. The sound, like a tide you know, will soon sweep you into its rhythm. So, before we sink deeper into this moment, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, let the light dim, let the fan hum quietly, and let's drift into tonight's story together. You rise before dawn, the air still cool and heavy with dust. The little workshop where you sleep is half home, half furnace. Its walls streaked with years of smoke and sweat. A small oil lamp flickers near the wall, making shadows dance over the cracked plaster. The faint scent of resin, soot, and burnt sand lingers from yesterday's work. You can still see the traces of molten glass scattered across the floor, cooled into fragile threads like frozen sunlight. Your bed is no more than a straw mat, your blanket a piece of worn linen. Yet you stand, stretching your arms, knowing that this small world is the center of something larger. You are an apprentice, one of many young hands learning the art of glass, an art that glows like captured stars when done right. The streets outside are nearly empty. You hear a distant rooster crow near the fish market, followed by the echo of temple bells carried on the breeze from the direction of Rakates, the old part of the city. You push open the door and step into the alley. The air hits your face, carrying with it the sharp, salty temps of the sea and the faint scent of bread baking somewhere down the lane. A few other apprentices pass by, yawning, carrying bundles of straw or jars of oil. Nobody speaks. The silence of the early hour is sacred, broken only by the sigh of wind through the narrow streets. Alexandria, even asleep, feels awake, its stones humming with the weight of 1,000 minds. Scholars, sailors, merchants, slaves, and dreamers all live stacked upon one another here, in this vast coastal maze of marble and mud brick. You make your way to the back courtyard, where the workshop's old furnace waits. Its clay mouth gapes wide and cold, surrounded by buckets of sand, ash, and broken shards from failed work. You kneel down, touching the rim. It is rough, pitted from years of use. Your fingers find the faint grooves your master once carved into it, to measure where the flame should rise. The sound of soft footsteps approaches the other apprentices gathering. A tall boy named Theon, 2 years older, tosses a stick into the kiln and grins without a word. The faintest orange light catches his cheek as someone sparks the fire. Slowly, the air fills with the dry hiss of rising heat. Soon, the workshop will glow again like a small sun, and the day will begin. You begin your chores quietly. First, you sweep the floor, pushing aside bits of broken glass that crunch under your feet. Each shard catches the growing firelight, scattering it like tiny rainbows. Then you check the clay jars, making sure they still hold enough oil for the lamps. The smell is thick, heavy, but comforting. It is the scent of familiarity, the rhythm of your days. From outside, a faint murmur rises, merchants setting up early stalls near the square. You hear the call of a man selling honey cakes, another shouting about figs from Crete. Even before sunrise, trade begins, as if the city fears what silence might bring. Somewhere, a woman laughs. Somewhere else, a baby cries. The noises swirl together, a living lullaby. Inside the workshop, the fire begins to roar, licking the walls with heat. Theon starts grinding sand with a pestle, the sound rhythmic and slow. You help, adding soda and lime, the mixture that will later melt into glass. It is humble work, but strange, how it feels like creating something alive from the dead, turning earth into light. Historians still argue whether glassmaking first began in Mesopotamia or here in Egypt itself. Some claim the earliest artisans stumbled upon it by accident, when a cooking fire melted sand mixed with minerals into a glossy puddle. Others say the knowledge came from traders, carried across the desert by caravans older than memory. Whatever the truth, by the time of Alexandria, it had become an art worthy of kings. Your master Menes says glass is the closest humans have come to trapping sunlight. He tells stories of how pharaohs once demanded blue glass beads to mimic lapis lazuli, and how Romans now pay silver for clear bottles that never cloud. He says that gods envy men for it, that even Ra, the sun god, cannot hold his own light. You remember his words as you carry a pail of water from the courtyard. Steam curls upward as it touches the furnace's edge, hissing like a living thing. The heat presses against your skin, making your clothes cling to your back. You work in silence, each motion slow and deliberate, because a careless move could mean a burn that never truly heals. A small stray cat darts through the open doorway, tail flicking, nose twitching at the smell of bread crusts left from last night. It watches you for a moment, then disappears under a pile of straw. Even it seems to know this place is alive. You pause once more, wiping sweat from your forehead. The fire dances before you, orange turning white at its core. The rhythm of breath, heat, and motion lulls you into a strange calm. For a moment, the noise of the city fades. You hear only the crackle of flame, the creak of wood, and the faint whisper of glass beginning to glow deep within the kiln. You wonder if the scholars up at the great library wake this early too. If they rise from their beds to chase the light in their own way, not through glass and fire, but through ink and thought. You have seen them once, in passing, robed figures walking the marble steps under towering columns. They carry scrolls, not tools, but somehow you feel their work is not so different from yours. Both chase something invisible, something that can only be glimpsed through reflection. As dawn breaks, a strip of gold slips across the sky. You catch it in the furnace glass, the sun's first shimmer reflected in your master's craft. It feels as though the whole city holds its breath for that moment. The river glows, the rooftops glint, and the sound of the waking world swells again. Your master's voice cuts through the air from the next room, gruff and impatient. He calls your name sharply, followed by the thud of his cane on the floor. It is time to begin the real work. You set the broom aside and turn toward his voice, heart quickening. The day has started. The air around you hums, filled with heat, dust, and promise. You take one last glance at the street outside, the faint glimmer of dawn over the canal, the silhouettes of fishermen, the outline of the distant lighthouse, and then step fully into the light of the furnace, ready to serve the fire. The sound of the cane strikes the floor again, sharper this time, echoing against the clay walls. The old man does not need to raise his voice. Every apprentice in the workshop knows that tone. It means someone is already late, or that yesterday's work fell short of perfection again. Menes stands by the long wooden table, his robe half open, hair wild, eyes still heavy from sleep but already fierce. His hands are dark with years of smoke and burns. A piece of glass, half finished, rests before him on the table. He turns it slowly in the light, examining its uneven rim. "Do you see this?" he mutters, not looking up. The question is not meant for anyone in particular, yet everyone feels it like a weight on the back. A child could do better than this. Was it you, Theon, or you? He gestures toward the group. You hesitate to breathe. Then he sighs, sets the glass down, and looks at you. "Ah, my youngest, come closer." You step forward. His eyes, though harsh, carry something else, a flicker of patience, or perhaps memory. He taps the glass again with his finger. "You worked on this, did you not?" You nod slowly, heart thudding. He lifts the piece closer to the window, where the new sun slips through. Dust dances across the glass surface, revealing tiny bubbles trapped inside like air from another world. "Too much heat, not enough rest," he says, voice lower now. "The fire is greedy. You must learn when to listen to it, and when to turn away." He sets the glass down carefully. Then he straightens his back, stretches, and walks to the furnace. "Today we will do better. You will fetch water first, before the market grows too busy. Fill the jars, and do not spill a drop. The city pays more for water than for wisdom these days." The apprentices exchange quiet glances, half amused, half fearful. Menes always speaks in riddles before sunrise. You grab 2 empty clay jars and step outside again. The light has changed already. The streets are beginning to hum with life. Sandal steps, donkey carts, the sing-song cries of vendors setting up their stalls. Alexandria moves fast once it wakes. Smoke rises from chimneys, birds scatter from rooftops, and the salty wind from the harbor mixes with the scent of olives, fish, and figs. You balance one jar on your hip, another in your hand. The alley opens to a wider street, lined with small shops, metal workers, potters, cloth dyers. The air thickens with color and sound. An older woman waves at you from a doorway, her hands covered in clay. "Off to the canal again, little one," she says. "Tell those water sellers they charge too much." You grin shyly, nodding, and keep walking. The canal is not far, just a few turns away. It snakes through the city like a silver thread, connecting the Nile to the sea. Without it, Alexandria would dry and crumble like a broken amphora. When you reach the canal, the sunlight is bouncing off the rippling surface, dazzling and bright. A few fishermen stand on the banks, repairing nets. Children play nearby, skipping stones that splash and vanish. You kneel down, filling the first jar carefully. The water is cool against your fingers, heavy with silt. A boy around your age, carrying a smaller jar, watches you. "You from the glass house?" he asks. You nod, again, glancing up. He smiles. "They say your master once made a mirror so clear it could trick a cat." You laugh softly. He says that too. The boy shrugs. Historians still argue whether such glass even existed. My uncle says the library scholars buy lies as easily as they buy scrolls. You raise an eyebrow, not sure what to say. The boy dips his jar, finishes, and runs off barefoot toward the market. You stand, feeling the sun warming your face. The canal glitters, calm but restless, carrying secrets from inland Egypt to the sea beyond the lighthouse. You hoist the jars and start back. The weight pulls at your arms, but the rhythm of footsteps keeps your mind from wandering too far. You pass the same streets again, now busier. filled with traders shouting over one another. The smell of roasted chickpeas drifts from a nearby stall. As you round a corner, something catches your eye. A line of scholars in white robes moves slowly along the far side of the street, each carrying scrolls wrapped in linen. They walk in silence, heads bowed, as if in a ritual. Behind them, the faint marble walls of the great library rise high, pale in the sunlight, its columns crowned with carved eagles. You pause, the jars pressing into your sides. The library has always fascinated you. They say it holds every book written since the dawn of time. They say inside, light never dies. It reflects from mirrors, polished bronze, and crystal lenses so that no flame is ever needed. You wonder if your master's glass ever made its way inside those halls. Maybe a window, a lens, or a bottle on some scholar's desk came from his furnace. The thought makes your chest feel strange, as if you too are a small part of something vast. A gust of wind stirs the dust around you, snapping you back to the street. You hurry on, shifting the jars before they slip. By the time you return to the workshop, the air inside is already thick with heat. Meanies glances up as you enter and nods once. Good. Put them near the door. Theon mix the sand again. And you, he adds, pointing at you, watch and learn today. The fire speaks a different language every morning. You set the jars down and watch. As he lowers a small rod into the glowing furnace, the molten glass clings to it, a golden bubble twisting and breathing. The sight still amazes you, how something solid can melt and yet hold shape again, like captured sunlight turned to liquid. Meanies blows gently into the tube, cheeks puffed, breath steady. The bubble grows, shimmering. He rolls it on the metal plate, forming its curve, then tilts it toward you. This, he says softly, is patience made visible. You hold your breath, afraid even the air from your lungs could break it. He smiles faintly, as if hearing your thought. Remember that, apprentice. The gods give fire to all men, but only a few learn how to breathe into it. Outside, the city roars with life, but in this small furnace room, everything slows. You feel the heat against your face, the smell of ash, the hum of your own pulse. The world narrows to the soft glow of glass and the sound of your master's steady breath. The heat from the furnace still clings to your skin as Meanies waves you toward the door. Go, before the market turns into chaos, he says, his voice rough from smoke. And mind the jars this time. The canal boys spill more than they carry. You nod, grabbing 2 fresh clay vessels from the wall shelf. Theon tosses you a lopsided grin. Careful, he says. If you drop them, he'll make you grind sand till sunset. You step out into the street once more. The morning has ripened into brightness. The sky a pale wash of gold and white. The air smells alive, crushed herbs, baking bread, brine from the harbor. The city is fully awake now, its veins pulsing with people. You head toward the canal again, feet slapping softly against stone. Merchants shout from their stalls, voices layered and musical. Fresh figs, sea salt, linen from Tyre. A camel grunts as it lumbers past, its handler swatting flies with a reed. A cart clatters by, carrying amphorae of olive oil that shimmer in the sun. As you weave through the crowd, the noise becomes a kind of music, the sound of Alexandria breathing. Every step feels like part of a rhythm older than anyone alive. The canal water glitters ahead, framed by the crooked lines of whitewashed houses. A few fishermen have pulled their small boats to shore, sorting their morning catch. The scent of fish mingles with the sweet rot of papyrus leaves floating near the edge. You crouch to fill the first jar, watching ripples stretch across the surface. The water here carries stories, Menes always says. It runs from the Nile, carrying the dust of tombs and temples before it meets the sea. Some say it carries blessings. Others say curses. Historians still argue whether Alexandria's canals were miracles of engineering or simply borrowed from the old delta villages that came before. You lift the jar, seal it with a small linen cloth, and start on the second. A cluster of children passes by, laughing, tossing handfuls of reeds at each other. One girl stops and stares at you, her hair tangled, her feet bare. "Are you one of the fire boys?" she asks. You smile faintly. "If you mean the glass apprentices, then yes." She tilts her head. "They say you work with fire that never dies." You pause, unsure whether to laugh or agree. "It sleeps at night," you say softly, "like all of us." She blinks at your answer, then grins and runs off, shouting for her friends. You watch her go, her laughter echoing along the waterway, and for a moment the city feels lighter. You balance both jars and begin your walk back. The sun is higher now, glinting off rooftops and bronze statues. You pass a baker's stall, where the smell of warm bread wraps around you like comfort itself. The baker waves, his hands white with flour. "Apprentice, take this, it's yesterday's loaf." You start to refuse, but he insists, shoving a small round bread into your free hand. You nod in thanks and continue, tearing off a piece as you walk. The bread is dry, but it softens with the morning air. As you near the workshop, the sound of a street performer catches your ear. A man playing a small reed flute. The melody winds through the market like smoke, thin and hypnotic. For a moment, everyone seems to slow. Even the shouting merchants pause as the tune fills the space between them. It's a song of the old gods, though few say their names aloud anymore. You reach the corner where the alley narrows, and you stop. Across the street, you see the outer wall of the great library once more, gleaming in the sunlight. You can't see inside, of course, but you imagine it, rows upon rows of scrolls, voices of the past captured in rolled papyrus. You imagine scholars arguing under high ceilings, their voices bouncing off marble, their words shaping the world in ways no fire ever could. You have heard stories, they say, inside the library are scrolls written by men who studied the stars and could predict floods of the Nile, that they read secrets whispered by the gods themselves. Some even claim there are scrolls describing machines that move without men, birds that fly without wings. A strange thought flickers in your mind. What if one day glass, the very thing you work with, becomes part of their studies? What if, through glass, they see the stars more clearly or capture sunlight in new ways? You almost smile at the idea before a sudden shout breaks your daydream. A man stumbles out of a nearby tavern, tripping over his own sandals. He curses loudly, nearly colliding with your jars. You step aside just in time, clutching them tight. He glares at you, then laughs. "Careful, boy. The city eats those who walk too softly." You say nothing, just keep walking, your heart still pounding. The street is rough, but you've learned that words can break faster than glass if you throw them carelessly. When you return to the workshop, Menes is hunched over the table again, carving something into a block of clay. Theon looks up from his bench. He's been talking about mirrors all morning. He whispers, "Says the scholars want one that can catch the sun." You set down the jars quietly. Menes does not look up. Did you spill any? No, master? He grunts approvingly, then gestures toward a pile of broken glass on the side table. Take those shards to the furnace. We melt them again. Nothing is wasted here. Not sand, not air, not failure. You pick up the shards carefully. Each one catches the light, throwing tiny beams across the walls. As you carry them toward the furnace, you realize how strange it is that beauty and danger come from the same thing. A single wrong breath and it shatters, cutting deep. But handled with patience, it becomes something eternal. The furnace roars softly, its mouth glowing. You toss in the pieces one by one, watching them vanish into the molten glow. The sight mesmerizes you, failure turning into possibility again. Behind you, Menes begins humming a tune, low and steady. It's the same one he always hums when work truly begins, an old hymn to Hephaestus, the god of fire and craft. The rhythm fills the space between hammer strikes and footsteps, until the workshop feels like a living heartbeat. You take your place beside Theon again. The heat prickles your face, and the smell of burning sand fills the air. The day stretches ahead, long and bright, with the promise of sweat, glass, and perhaps, if you're lucky, a moment of pride. By the time you finish sorting the shards, the light outside has shifted. The sun now climbs high enough to cast narrow lines through the dusty air, and each streak seems to shimmer as it catches on particles of glass and smoke. You stand for a moment near the open doorway, the warmth of the day rolling in from the street. A gentle breeze carries the faint murmur of voices from beyond the wall. Menes gestures for you to fetch another bundle of wood for the furnace, then waves his cane in that direction. Go through the side street when you're done. I need you to bring back more oil from the storehouse. You nod and step out once more, wiping your hands on your tunic. The street outside glows white in the sunlight. The city moves faster now. Carts creak under sacks of grain. Men in linen robes argue over prices, and children chase one another between the stalls. The hum of Alexandria feels endless. You keep close to the buildings, walking the long, narrow lane that leads toward the library's quarter. The scent changes there, less of fish and smoke, more of parchment, ink, and cool stone. The walls rise higher, each block smooth and pale, and for a moment the city feels quieter, more deliberate. When you reach the great steps of the library, you stop. The sight still fills you with awe, no matter how many times you pass it. Massive columns tower above, carved with ivy and gods of wisdom. A few scholars stand near the entrance, arguing in low voices, scrolls tucked under their arms. They wear simple white robes, yet they seem heavier with thought than any worker burdened by stone. You linger near the base of the steps, pretending to adjust the strap of your water jar, though really you just want to listen. I tell you, one scholar says, his tone sharp, the stars move in perfect circles. The gods would not allow otherwise. Another shakes his head. Circles, yes, but not around us. Aristarchus was right. The earth itself moves. The library hides his scrolls because men fear truth more than heresy. The first man laughs. You speak like a fool. If we moved, we would feel it. Historians still argue whether that conversation, or something like it, ever happened in the courtyards of the great library. Some say Aristarchus's heliocentric idea survived only as a whisper, a rumor traded among daring thinkers. Others insist it never reached Alexandria at all. Yet, in this moment, you hear the spark of it, flickering like heat above a kill. You stand quietly as they walk away, their debate fading into the echo of sandals against marble. The sound of scrolls shifting in the breeze reminds you of waves brushing stone. You turn and walk around the outer wall. The storehouse is small, tucked beside the library's shadow. You greet the keeper, an older man whose hands smell of olive oil and ink. He knows you by now. "Ah, the glass boy," he says with a soft grin. "Your master still making the air itself shimmer." You nod politely, accepting a sealed jar of oil. He says the glass will mirror the sun. The man chuckles. "Then perhaps one day you'll see your face in it and understand the gods." You thank him and head back toward the workshop. The jar is heavier than you expected, slick with oil at the rim. The sun beats against your neck as you cross the open square. As you pass the library steps again, you notice a young scribe seated on the lower stair, writing quickly on a wax tablet. His hair is wild, his robe smeared with ink. He pauses to glance up at you. "What's that?" he asks. "Oil?" you answer. He nods, then returns to his writing. "Everything burns if one waits long enough," he mutters, not to you, but to himself. You walk on, his words trailing behind you like smoke. By the time you return to the workshop, the air inside feels heavier, the furnace louder. Meanie stands near the door, talking to a man dressed far too richly to belong here. The stranger's robe is deep red, his sandals clean, his expression unreadable. Meanie sees you and gestures for you to set the oil down. "This is my apprentice," he says to the stranger. He works well, though his mind wanders two things too high for his station. The stranger looks you over briefly. Good. He'll learn faster that way. He turns back to Meanies. "I need 10 pieces by the end of the week. Lenses, clear as spring water." The scholars want to study the light of the heavens. You stand quietly as they speak, your curiosity sparking at the word lenses. The master nods solemnly. "It can be done, if the fire obeys." The stranger leaves soon after, his footsteps fading into the street. Meanies exhales slowly, running a hand over his face. "Work for the library," he murmurs. "They pay well, but they expect the impossible." He glances at you. "You will help prepare the sand tonight. The purest grains only, no dirt, no ash. The light must travel through it like thought through air." You nod, feeling a strange mix of pride and fear. The library, scholars, lenses, these words swirl in your head like embers in wind. Later, as the day wears on, you help grind the sand. The pestle's slow rhythm fills the workshop, steady and endless. Theon hums softly beside you, his hands powdered white. "Do you ever think," he says, "that the things we make might outlive us?" You look up from your work. "The glass?" He nods. "Maybe one day someone will look through it and see the world as we never could." You think of the scholars, their scrolls, their endless debates about stars. "Maybe," you say quietly, "or maybe they'll break it and start again." The afternoon heat presses against the walls. The city outside hums like an insect under glass. The smell of molten sand and oil fills the air. Menes moves among you, checking the mixture, muttering to himself, "To coarse, to dull. Patience, boys, even light must learn to wait its turn." You continue grinding until your arms ache, the world narrowing again to sound and heat. The city fades beyond the walls. Time itself seems to melt, slow and golden, like the glass that will soon take shape. The sun is beginning to lower, soft gold spilling across the rooftops, when Meanies finally orders the furnace lit again. The fire catches fast, roaring to life with a deep, rhythmic pulse that fills the room. The air shimmers, and soon the scent of burning sand and resin drifts through every corner of the workshop. You take your place near the kiln, sweeping the floor as Meanies always insists before work begins. The dust rises in thin curls, catching the firelight, floating like tiny spirits in the air. Theon hums again, his tone slower this time, matching the flicker of the flame. You work silently, rhythmically. Sweep, gather, toss the ash into the pit, then back again. The furnace crackles beside you, its mouth glowing brighter with each breath of the bellows. The sound is like an animal being tamed, alive but obedient. Meanies crouches nearby, poking at the coals with his metal rod. Sparks leap up and vanish in an instant. "Keep your distance," he mutters. "The fire is a friend until you forget its temper." You nod, setting the broom aside. Your eyes sting from the smoke, but there is something hypnotic about the movement of the flames. They twist and roll inside the furnace like liquid silk, their light reflecting in the faint glass scraps you swept together earlier. Outside, the street has quieted slightly. The market is ending for the day, vendors calling out final prices, carts creaking away toward the docks. The muffled hum of the city fades behind the thick clay walls, replaced by the furnace's steady breathing. You reach for a bucket of sand. The fine grains feel cool between your fingers. You pour it carefully into the crucible, watching it settle on the molten surface inside the kiln. The change is almost invisible at first, just a faint shimmer, a slow bending of light. Meanies watches closely. "Now wait," he says. "Let the fire do what we cannot." You step back, wiping sweat from your brow. Theon hands you a damp cloth, nodding toward the flickering glow. He says the fire remembers every mistake, he whispers. That's why he never lets it die completely. You glance toward the furnace again. Indeed, even when the workshop sleeps, a faint ember always remains inside. Meanies tends it before bed, as carefully as a mother might tend a child. "Do you believe it remembers?" You ask quietly. Theon shrugs. "I believe he does. Maybe that's enough." The thought lingers in your mind as the minutes stretch. The heat presses down harder, and your skin feels sticky from sweat and soot. Meanies moves between stations with slow precision, checking mixtures, adjusting tongs, murmuring to himself. He pauses once, gazing at the fire's heart. Historians still argue whether the gods gave us craft or curiosity first, he says softly, but whichever it was, it cursed us with restlessness. That's why no one in this city ever sleeps. You are not sure if he's talking to you or to the flames. By now, the furnace glows nearly white. The sound shifts, a low hum that makes the walls tremble slightly. The molten glass within is ready. Meanies lifts his long iron pipe, dips it into the fire, and draws it out again with a glowing blob clinging to the tip. The sight still steals your breath, liquid light, alive, spinning. He rolls it gently on the metal slab, shaping it, coaxing it into smoothness. Then he gestures to you. "Watch my breath," he says. "Not the glass. The breath makes the shape, not the heat." You nod and study him. His cheeks puff out, then deflate in steady rhythm. The bubble expands, glowing gold, then orange, then a pale honey color as it cools slightly. He lowers the pipe and hands it to you without warning. Your turn. You freeze. "Mine." He nods once. "Do not tremble." The fire respects confidence. You take the pipe carefully, its metal hot even through the cloth. The weight feels awkward. You lift it, eyes on the molten glass that sways slightly at the tip. It's beautiful and terrifying. Manus's voice softens. Now breathe slowly, as if you're whispering a secret to it. You inhale, then exhale into the pipe. The sound of air fills your ears. The bubble swells just a little, trembling, then holds. You stop, heart racing. Menes peers closely, then grins. Good. It listens to you. Theon claps once, a quick sound drowned almost immediately by the crackle of the fire. You can't help but smile, though your hands still shake. The bubble gleams in the fading light. It is not perfect, a small, uneven spot mars its curve, but it's whole. Menes takes it gently, slides it onto the cooling plate, and nods. Tomorrow, you try again. One day, the air inside will obey completely. You step back, feeling both lighter and heavier at once. The heat swirls around you, the room glowing with the dance of fire and glass. Outside, the last sliver of sunlight fades behind the rooftops. For a moment, the workshop feels suspended between worlds, half in shadow, half in flame. Menes sits on his stool, rubbing his temples. Theon hums again, quieter now. The cat from earlier reappears near the doorway, watching the fire as if it understands something none of you do. You sink onto the floor, your back against the wall, exhaustion mixing with pride. The furnace crackles softly beside you, and the scent of hot sand fills your lungs. You think about how this moment, ordinary as it seems, might one day live on in a piece of glass that travels beyond the city. Maybe a scholar will hold it up to the sun and marvel at how clear it is, never knowing who shaped it. Maybe the fire will remember, even if no one else does. As the evening deepens, the flames dim slightly, shifting from white to gold, then to a steady orange. Menes stands, stretches his back, and mutters, "That's enough for today." You rise slowly, helping Theon close the furnace door, sliding the heavy stone slab across its mouth. The sudden quiet feels strange, the kind that rings in your ears after a long noise. Outside, night has begun to spread. The alley glows faintly with torchlight, and the sound of distant waves carries through the air. You glance once more at the furnace, its light still leaking faintly through the cracks. It breathes, even now. And so do you. The next morning begins with a sound you now know by heart, the thud of Menes's cane striking the floor. It comes before the sun, before the roosters, before the seagulls that circle over the rooftops. The workshop is still half in shadow, the air cool and soft, though you know it will not stay that way for long. You rise, rubbing your eyes, the faint ache of yesterday's work still sitting in your shoulders. Theon stirs beside the furnace, groaning softly. He must have fallen asleep near the embers again. A small pile of ash lies near his feet, proof that the furnace never truly sleeps, not even through the night. Manus's voice cuts through the silence. "Up, both of you. We have a delivery today." You blink, surprised. Deliveries are rare, especially when the glass is delicate. "Where to, master?" "To the harbor," he replies, not looking at you. Some merchant ordered a crate of the small vials. He trades oils with the islanders, and they pay extra for bottles that sparkle in sunlight. He walks past you, muttering to himself about ropes and nails. "And do not let the sailors touch the goods," he adds. "They break what they do not understand." You nod quickly, already reaching for your sandals. Theon yawns, stretching. "At least we get to see the sea," he says, smiling faintly. You gather the crates from the corner. Inside, each glass bottle rests in straw, shimmering faintly even in the dim morning light. They look like tiny captured suns. You balance 2 crates carefully on your shoulder and follow Theon out into the street. The air outside is cool and damp. A faint mist rolls from the harbor, curling around the narrow alleys like smoke. You can hear the city waking up, merchants shouting, carts creaking. The first cries of fishmongers calling out their morning catch. Alexandria, near the water, feels different from the rest of the city. The scent of salt and tar mixes with spices and fruit. Sailors from across the Mediterranean crowd the docks, their accents thick, their tunics bright with foreign colors. The hum of languages you cannot understand surrounds you, a living chorus of trade. Theon nudges you. You ever wonder what lies beyond that line? He points toward the horizon, where the sea meets the pale pink sky. You shake your head. Farther than the master would ever let us go. He laughs softly. True, as you reach the dock, a man with a thick beard waves you over. He wears gold earrings and smells strongly of myrrh. "Meneses boys," he says, grinning, "you have the glass." Theon nods and sets his crate down carefully. The man crouches, lifting a bottle to the light. The sunlight hits it perfectly, scattering small circles of color across his face. He whistles softly. "Beautiful, you Egyptians have a gift. The islanders will pay well for this." He tosses Theon a small purse, heavy with coins. "Tell your master his skill is worth every drachma." You can't help but stare at the water behind him. Ships bob gently on the waves, their sails rising like wings. Men unload amphorae of wine and rolls of linen, shouting in Greek, Aramaic, and tongues you've never heard. The wooden planks under your feet creak with every step. You hand over the second crate and step back. The sea breeze cools your skin, carrying the faint taste of salt. It smells ancient, like something that has seen everything but remembers nothing. As you stand there, a group of sailors begins arguing nearby. One points toward the distant lighthouse, the great Pharos, whose flame still burns even in daylight. They say its mirrors can be seen from 20 miles away. One boasts, another laughs. Mirrors, you say? The light itself bends there. Some claim it burns enemy ships before they ever reach shore. Historians still argue whether the Ruse lighthouse truly used mirrors to magnify its beam, or whether that was a story born from wonder. But standing here, with sunlight glinting off every surface and the air humming with energy, you believe it might just be true. Theon finishes signing the merchant's receipt and joins you near the edge of the dock. "Someday," he says quietly, "I'll work on something like that. A fire so bright it reaches the stars." You smile. You and Menes would argue for eternity about whose fire is greater. He laughs, shaking his head. He'd win, of course. He always does. You linger there for a while, watching the sea. The sound of gulls fills the air, sharp and distant. A few children run past, chasing after falling scraps of rope and driftwood. Somewhere nearby, a priest chants over the water, offering prayers for safe voyages. Eventually, you turn back toward the city, the coins clinking softly in your pouch. The streets between the docks and the workshop are busier now, flooded with carts and people. The scent of spices grows thicker, mixed with roasted nuts and smoke. You stop once to watch a man with painted hands performing tricks with small glass beads. He tosses them into the air, catching the sunlight so they sparkle like living jewels. The crowd cheers as one bead vanishes in his palm, then reappears behind a child's ear. You smile, half amused, half admiring. When you return to the workshop, Menes is sitting on a stool, polishing a small lens. He looks up briefly. "Good," he says. "You didn't break anything? That's improvement." He gestures for you to sit. "Tell me, what did you see at the harbor?" You think for a moment. Ships, smoke, mirrors that burn the sky. Menes chuckles softly. "Ah, so the sailors are still telling that story." He sets down the lens and leans forward. "Let me tell you something, boy. Fire and glass can bend light, yes, but not all light comes from the sun. Some comes from within. When you learn to see that, you'll understand the real craft." You nod, not sure you truly understand, but the words settle somewhere deep inside. The room grows quiet again. The furnace hums faintly in the background, its glow steady, alive. As the day ends, you sweep the floor once more, brushing away the straw and shards. The sky outside burns red with the last of the sun, and the city beyond hums softly, the sound of another day closing in Alexandria. You pause near the doorway, looking out at the flicker of torches and the darkening sea. Somewhere far away, the ships you saw this morning are already fading into the horizon. You wonder if any of them carry something your hands helped shape. Then you smile faintly and close the door. The furnace crackles one last time before settling into its slow, steady rhythm like a heartbeat in the dark. By midday, the air is heavy and still. The light from the furnace spills through the open doorway, making the dust dance in the heat. The smell of molten sand mixes with the sweet tang of olives and figs drifting in from the street. Menes has gone to meet a supplier near the temple district, leaving you and Theon to finish the small repairs inside the workshop. The silence feels strange without his muttering. You hear only the rhythmic sound of the pestle grinding powder, the faint hum of the fire, and the distant hum of the market. It's almost peaceful. Theon wipes his forehead with the back of his arm. "Let's take a break," he says, his voice hoarse. "If he catches us sitting, we'll say the glass was cooling." You smile and nod. "There's a fig seller down the lane," you say. "Maybe he'll let us sit in the shade." You step out together, blinking as the brightness hits your eyes. The street is a maze of sounds and colors, vendors shouting prices. The laughter of children, the squeak of carts rolling over uneven stones. Alexandria breathes differently during the midday hours. Everyone seems louder, faster, as if the whole city races against the heat itself. The fig seller waves as you approach. His stand is small, the fruit piled in woven baskets, glistening under the sunlight. "Ah, my young glassmakers," he says, his voice rich and warm. "Come to trade your sweat for sweetness." Theon tosses him a coin. "Two of the best." The man laughs and hands over a handful of figs, their skin soft and purple. You sit beside the stand, leaning against the wall, where a patch of shade cools the stones. Theon bites into his fruit, the juice running down his fingers. "Do you ever think about leaving?" he asks suddenly. "Going somewhere beyond the desert, maybe across the sea?" You look at him and do what? "Anything," he says. "They say, in Rhodes, men use mirrors to set fire to ships. In Athens, they study stars that move like silver fish. And in Rome, the streets themselves are made of marble." You take a bite of your fig, chewing slowly. "Maybe," you say, but Menes says, "those who chase new fire forget where they first learned to hold it." Theon snorts softly. That sounds like him. A small group of performers gathers in the square nearby, a man balancing pots on his head. Two children clapping rhythmically, a woman singing in a soft, clear voice. Her song drifts across the street, low and steady, the kind that feels older than memory. The crowd slows to listen. Even the merchants pause, leaning on their stalls. Theon sighs. Every time I hear music like that, I think of the sea. Don't know why. You nod. It sounds like the tide, always returning. The song fades, and the crowd scatters back into motion. You finish your fig, toss the stem aside, and stretch your legs. The air smells of cinnamon and sweat. Theon tosses the fig seller another coin for good measure. As you stand to leave, you hear someone nearby whispering. Two men in dusty robes sit by the fountain, speaking in low voices. You catch only fragments. The scholars again. They say the library is hiding scrolls about fire and sound. Forbidden things. Burned one last night. Too dangerous to copy. You glance at Theon. He shrugs. But you can tell he's listening to rumors about the library are as common as pigeons in this city, but each one feels heavier when heard in whispers. Historians still argue whether the great library of Alexandria ever truly burned once or many times, or whether the small fires were simply accidents hidden by pride. But here, in this moment, the whispers make it feel fragile. Like even knowledge itself can melt if held too close to the flame. You walk back slowly through the narrow streets, the air shimmering with heat. Theon hums softly, the same rhythm as the woman's song from the square. When you reach the workshop, Menes is already back, leaning over a table covered in scrolls and bits of clay. He looks up. Late. Apologies, master. You say quickly, we were eating. He eyes you for a moment, then grunts. Good. The fire waits better when the stomach doesn't. He rolls up one of the scrolls, tucking it under his arm. Tomorrow we start early. The scholars have changed their order again. They want glass shaped like the human eye, says it helps them study light and truth. You exchange a quick glance with Theon. How can glass see truth, you ask? Menes chuckles softly. That's the question, isn't it? He pats your shoulder. Clean the furnace. When you look into the fire long enough, it starts to look back. You obey, though the words linger in your mind. The idea of glass that can see or reveal something hidden stirs something uneasy inside you. By the time the floor is swept and the last shards gathered, the sun has begun to drop. The orange light floods through the doorway, touching every tool and wall until the entire room glows like molten glass. Menes sits quietly, staring into the furnace. Do you know, he says softly, they once used ground glass in medicine to heal wounds. Fools nearly killed themselves with it, but they swore it worked. The difference between cure and curse is often no thicker than a grain of sand. You nod, unsure what to say. His voice sounds distant, almost like he's talking to himself. The night air begins to cool the walls, and a faint breeze slips through the door. You can hear laughter from the market outside, faint, drifting, alive. You sit near the doorway, watching shadows stretch across the street. Theon packs up the tools, humming again. Menes remains still, his face reflecting the furnace's glow. Somewhere far off, the temple bells ring, soft and slow, marking the end of another day. You lean back against the wall, eyelids heavy, and for a brief moment, you imagine the fire breathing quietly in rhythm with your own. The city fades into a low hum, the glass cooling beside you, and the night folds itself gently over Alexandria once again. You wake before dawn again, to the sound of the furnace cracking softly as its coals breathe out their last bits of warmth. The workshop smells faintly of ash and oil. Meanies is already awake, seated on his stool, sharpening the edge of a metal rod with quiet patience. He does not speak at first. Theon snores faintly in the corner. A thin line of grey light spills through the doorway, tracing dust motes in the air. Finally, Meanies looks up. "You've been thinking too much. You blink, Master." He grins faintly, though his eyes stay sharp. Apprentices who think too much forget to feel the heat. The fire doesn't trust a distracted hand. You nod quickly, unsure what else to say. He chuckles, then stands with a soft groan, stretching his back. "Good. Keep your mind where your hands are. Now, fetch me the sand jars. We start early today." The day unfolds in the usual rhythm at first. You and Theon sort the materials, grind the soda, mix the lime. The smell of wet sand fills the air. But even as you move, your mind drifts back to what Meanies said yesterday, glass shaped like the human eye, meant to study truth. You wonder what that means, and whether such glass can really help someone see more clearly. By mid-morning, a visitor arrives. The door creaks open, and a tall figure in a light blue robe steps in, carrying a leather case. His beard is neatly trimmed, and his expression calm but serious. A scholar, by the look of him, Meanies wipes his hands on his tunic and nods respectfully. "Welcome. You must be the philosopher who sent word." The man inclines his head. "Philon of Cyrene," he says softly. "I study light and its nature. The library's patron has granted me permission to commission lenses from your hand." Meanies gestures to a stool. "You may sit. My boys will fetch water." You move quickly, pouring water into a clay cup and offering it. Philon accepts it with a quiet nod, his gaze already wandering to the tools, the furnace, the rods glinting in the light. "Glass," he murmurs. "It bends the world without breaking it. A dangerous gift." Meanies smiles faintly. "Some say that about thought itself." Philon looks at you next, his eyes bright. "And this is your apprentice?" Meanies nods. "Still learning when to breathe." Philon chuckles. "Good breath and glass are not so different. Both are fragile, both reveal what's hidden only when treated with care." He sets down his case and opens it carefully. Inside lie several small sketches on papyrus. Circles, rays, and curious diagrams of light passing through curved glass. He points to one. "This is what I need. A sphere that catches light and gathers it to a single point. They say the sun's fire can be called down this way." Historians still argue whether such lenses, the early ancestors of magnifying glass or telescope, truly existed in ancient Alexandria, or whether they were ideas ahead of their time. But, in this moment, the drawing feels real enough to make you shiver. Meanies studies the sketch for a long moment. "It can be done," he says finally, "but it will take patience." And silence. The fire listens when the world does not. Philon nods slowly. "Silence I can afford. Patience, we shall see." He places a small bundle of coins on the table, then rises. "I will return in 3 days. If you succeed, you will help me prove that light is alive." He leaves as quietly as he came, his robe brushing the floor. Theon whistles low. Alive, he sounds mad. Meanies doesn't answer. He stares at the drawing for a long while before folding it carefully. Madness is often what curiosity looks like before it becomes discovery. You glance at the furnace, now glowing softly again, and wonder if that's what you're learning, curiosity disguised as craft. The rest of the day is spent in near silence. Menes insists that the mixture be perfect, that every grain of sand be ground twice, filtered through fine linen, and mixed with the right balance of soda. You and Theon work in rhythm, the sound of grinding and shuffling the only music. By afternoon, your arms ache. The air grows thick, humming with heat. Outside, the city seems to shimmer, the light bending and trembling above the rooftops. Alexandria feels like it's breathing through the glass itself. When Menes finally speaks, his voice is low. You ever hear what they say about the scholars who work in the library's lowest halls? You look up, shaking your head. They say, he continues, that some of them try to make light move without flame. They build mirrors that catch the morning sun and pass it from wall to wall until it travels through an entire room with no torch at all. Theon grins. So they steal the sun. Menes smirks. Maybe, or maybe they're teaching it to walk. You pause, feeling that same strange unease. Again, curiosity mixed with wonder. You picture the scholars underground, guiding sunlight through mirrored glass, chasing something invisible but powerful. As the day drifts toward evening, Menes finally steps back from the workbench. Enough, he says. Let the sand rest. Tomorrow we give it life. You nod, setting aside the pestle. Theon slumps against the wall, groaning. I can't feel my arms. Menes chuckles softly. Good, then you've done real work. You step outside for a moment, into the cooling air. The street is painted in soft gold and rose. The smell of cooking fills the air. Lentils, garlic, roasted fish. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs. You tilt your head toward the sky. The Pharos lighthouse gleams faintly in the distance, its flame just beginning to glow as the sun fades. You can almost imagine Phylan's lens catching that same light, bending it into focus, pulling it closer. The idea stays with you even as the stars begin to appear, small, bright points scattered across the darkening sky. You think of glass and light, of truth and fire, and how all of them seem both dangerous and beautiful. When you return inside, the workshop hums with quiet. Menes sits near the furnace, staring into its faint glow. Remember, he says without looking up. The fire reveals only to those who wait long enough to see. You sit near him, the warmth washing over you, the rhythm of the flames slow and steady. For a while, none of you speak. The night deepens, the air softens, and the city beyond fades into the hush of distant waves. You close your eyes, feeling the flicker of light behind your eyelids, as if the fire has left its mark. Glowing quietly somewhere inside you, the morning air carries a chill that seeps through the cracks in the wall. Alexandria has moods like any living creature, and today it wakes slowly, wrapped in a pale haze that softens even the sound of footsteps. The city feels quieter than usual, as if holding its breath. Menes is already by the furnace when you open your eyes. He is staring into the dim coals, his face lit faintly by the orange glow. Theon is still asleep, curled beside the pile of straw. Without looking up, Menes says, "Today we make the scholar's sphere." You nod, rubbing sleep from your eyes. He called it a lens. You say quietly. Menes smirks. A sphere, a lens, a trick of light. Call it what you like. The fire doesn't care what name you give it. He gestures toward the jars of sand lined neatly on the table. Begin. You and Theon start working without another word. The rhythm is familiar now. The scrape of the pestle, the steady beat of the furnace, the muted hum of the city beyond the walls. The sand must be pure, Menes says, pure as truth itself. You strain it through fine linen, feeling each grain slide between your fingers. The dust clings to your skin, cold and soft. When the mixture is ready, Menes stirs it into the crucible. The heat builds quickly, filling the air with a shimmering pulse. The sound of the fire deepens into a low growl, like breath from something ancient. You watch as the sand begins to melt. It starts dull, then brightens, until it glows like molten amber. Menes leans close, eyes narrowing. Do you see that? He says. That shimmer means the fire is listening. You nod, though you aren't sure what he means. The light ripples, twisting slightly as it moves through the melting glass. It's hypnotic. You can almost imagine the world itself bending within it. Historians still argue whether artisans in Alexandria truly understood refraction, how light bends when it passes through glass, or if they only saw it as a beautiful accident. But here, under Menes's steady gaze, it feels deliberate, almost divine. He takes his long iron rod, dips it into the glowing mass, and draws out a small sphere of molten glass. It glows white, trembling at the edge of collapse. The heat radiates outward, and your eyes sting from the brightness. Watch carefully, he says, his voice low but steady. What you see here is sunlight turned to flesh. He blows gently into the pipe, turning it slowly as the sphere grows. You see your own reflection warping across its surface, small, distorted, and rippling. It feels strange, seeing yourself captured inside something so alive. After a few moments, he hands you the pipe. Your turn. You hesitate. The glass sways slightly, still glowing, breathing heat. You steady your hands, the weight heavier than before. Slow, he murmurs. If you breathe too fast, it shatters. Too slow, and it dies. You bring the pipe to your lips and exhale, soft and even. The bubble expands, smooth and steady, the light moving within it like liquid gold. For a second, it feels as though the world narrows to that one fragile moment, breath meeting flame, life caught in motion. Menes nods. Good. Now close it. You twist the rod gently as he taught you, sealing the end. The glow fades slowly from white to amber. You place it carefully on the slab. It rests there, perfect and trembling, the faint shimmer of light still alive within. Theon exhales a low whistle. That's it. That's the thing the scholar wanted. Menes wipes sweat from his brow. That's the beginning of it. The rest is patience. You watch as he begins to polish the surface with a piece of linen dipped in oil. The glass cools, growing clearer with every motion. Soon you can see your own reflection, again warped, stretched, but whole. Menes lifts it toward the light. The morning sun streams through the window, and for a brief instant, the entire room fills with a narrow beam of light that burns bright against the far wall. Theon gasps softly. You can't help but smile. It really gathers light. Menes studies the spot, the faint curl of smoke rising where the beam touches wood. It gathers truth, he says quietly, and truth always burns. He sets the glass down carefully and sits. That scholar will get his lens. But tell me, boys, what do you think he'll see once he looks through it? Theon shrugs. The stars, maybe. Or his own nose. You say nothing. You keep watching the faint smoke curling from the wall, the wood still dark where the light struck it. You wonder if the scholar is ready for whatever truth this thing might show him. By midday, Menes sends Theon to fetch more wood. You stay behind to clean the tools. The workshop hums with faint heat, though the fire has quieted. The city outside is loud again. Voices, carts, footsteps. You pause for a moment and glance toward the doorway. Across the street, a group of children are playing with small glass marbles, the light bouncing off them in tiny rainbows. You smile faintly. To them, it's only play. To you, it feels like the same mystery Menes speaks of, only simpler and truer. Theon returns, carrying a bundle of firewood, his hair damp with sweat. The market's packed today, he says. Everyone's talking about something at the library. You look up. What happened? He shrugs. A scroll was stolen. Some say it was about fire and light. Others say it was nonsense. They're blaming a foreign scholar. Menes looks up sharply. Theon shrugs again. Didn't catch the name. Menes exhales slowly. If it was him, he'll come here soon. Trouble always follows those who chase the sun. The rest of the day passes slower, heavier. You can't shake the thought of the missing scroll or the sphere of glass still sitting on the table, glinting faintly in the fading light. As dusk falls, Menes covers it with cloth. Let it rest, he says. Truth cools better in darkness. You step outside to fetch water one last time. The street is glowing with lanterns now, each one flickering like a small star trapped in glass. The city hums softly under the deepening sky. You pause by the canal, the water black and still. The reflection of the Pharos lighthouse shimmers in the ripples, its flame burning high above the sea. You wonder if somewhere in that very moment, Philin of Cyrene is staring at the same light, through the same kind of glass, and seeing something no one else ever has. You carry the thought home with you, letting it settle quietly between the noise of your footsteps and the calm rhythm of the waves beyond the harbor. The next morning comes with a faint taste of salt in the air. A sea wind sweeps through the narrow alleys, tugging at loose shutters and carrying with it the sound of gulls calling above the rooftops. You wake to find Menes standing by the doorway, staring toward the direction of the library. His expression is unreadable. Theon yawns and stretches. You've been up long, master, Menes grunts, long enough to hear rumors before breakfast. He turns, his face serious. The scholar Philin was questioned last night. They say he carried a forbidden scroll from the library's restricted halls. They took him away before dawn. You sit up quickly. Will he come back? Menes shakes his head slowly. When men start teaching light how to burn, someone always decides they've gone too far. The room feels heavier after that. Even the furnace seems quieter, as though listening. Menes finally sighs and gestures toward the covered glass sphere resting on the table. But work doesn't stop for rumor. Truth still wants to be shaped. You help remove the cloth. The lens beneath gleams faintly in the dim light, smooth and clear, as if it has stored the sunrise within it. Theon whistles softly. If he's gone, what do we do with it? Menes doesn't answer right away. He studies the glass for a long moment, then mutters, "We finish it anyway." Knowledge doesn't belong to any man. You and Theon fall back into motion. The rhythm returns, grinding, polishing, sweeping. The furnace flares to life again, roaring with golden light. The city hums faintly outside, the sounds of carts and footsteps drifting through the cracks in the wall. Hours pass like that. Theon works the bellows. You polish the glass sphere, and Menes moves between you, inspecting every step. The heat grows thick enough to make your tunic stick to your back. Sweat drips down your neck and into your collar, but the work feels sacred somehow. Menes finally speaks. When you look into glass, what do you see? You pause, unsure whether it's a question or a test. My reflection, Master, he nods slowly. That's what most men see. But if you wait long enough, you'll see what's behind it too. He lifts the glass sphere from the table and holds it up toward the window. The sunlight hits it, and once again a narrow beam forms, sharp, bright, alive. The beam lands on the wall, leaving a tiny white circle that trembles with motion. See that Menes says softly, "The fire we control, the light we shape, it obeys no one's pride. It simply moves where it's meant to go." He turns to you. Hold it. You take the glass carefully. It's warm, heavier than it looks. You lift it toward the window, angling it slightly, and the beam shifts across the wall. The light dances with your movement, alive under your fingertips. You can't help but smile. Menes watches you quietly. Remember this. The same fire that gives warmth can also blind. That's why we work with care, not arrogance. You nod. Like Philin. Exactly, he says, his voice low. He saw too much too fast. You lower the lens, placing it gently back on the table. The beam fades, leaving only the quiet glow of the furnace behind. Theon breaks the silence first. Master, do you think he was right? That light itself is alive? Menes leans back against his stool, rubbing his chin. Historians will still argue about that long after we're gone. But perhaps life isn't only what breathes. Maybe it's what moves, what reveals. You think about that as you polish the sphere again, the linen soft against its surface. It gleams brighter now, catching every flicker from the furnace. The light seems to twist inside it, bending as if it wants to escape. Menes walks to the window and peers out at the city. The library will hush this soon, he says quietly. They always do. Too many scrolls, too many voices. The fire of thought must be kept small, or it burns the house that shelters it. Theon chuckles nervously. You make it sound like fire and knowledge are the same thing. Menes glances at him. Aren't they? The silence that follows feels longer than usual. Even the furnace seems to hum more softly, as though it understands the weight of the words. By midday, the work slows. Menes orders the lens cooled in a basin of oil, its surface now flawless and round. He places it in a clay box, sealing it with wax. If Philin doesn't return, this stays here. Maybe the library will come for it. Maybe no one will. Theon frowns. Then all this was for nothing. Menes shakes his head. Nothing made with patience is ever wasted. You step outside for a moment, letting the air touch your skin. The street is bright, almost painfully so. The city moves as it always does, loud, alive, unaware of the small truths hidden behind its walls. Across the street, a group of scholars passes, their robes whispering against the stones. You watch them disappear toward the library's steps, their scrolls tucked tight to their chests, as if afraid the air might steal their secrets. You glance back through the doorway at Menes still bent over the furnace. His figure glows in the heat, framed by the dancing orange light. Theon hums softly nearby, tapping his foot against the floor in rhythm with the fire's breath. For a moment, you feel as though you are standing inside the heart of something ancient, not just a workshop, but a place where the world's hidden truths are melted, shaped, and cooled into clarity. The sound of a distant bell drifts from the harbor, followed by the low moan of a ship horn. Somewhere beyond the walls, the tide is rising. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the faint pulse of the furnace behind you. The whisper of wind through the alley, the heartbeat of Alexandria in every sound. You know that tomorrow will come the same way it always does, with smoke, heat, and dust, but somehow today feels different. You can sense that something has changed, not in the world, but within you. When you open your eyes again, the city gleams under the sun, a mosaic of gold and shadow. Somewhere in its endless noise, truth moves quietly, waiting to be found, shaped, and seen. Evening settles softly over the city, brushing Alexandria in shades of amber and smoke. The workshop glows from within, the last firelight trembling against the walls. You sit near the doorway, legs crossed, polishing the cooled glass shards while Theon stacks the tools. The day has been long, but Menes shows no sign of stopping. He sits at the table, staring at the clay box that now holds the scholar's lens. His fingers drum quietly against the wood. The room smells of burnt oil and faint resin. Outside, a single cart rattles by, its wheels echoing down the alley before fading into silence. Theon stretches his arms with a groan. If that scholar was taken, he says, what happens to us if someone finds the glass? Menes doesn't look up. We are craftsmen, not philosophers. The fire doesn't accuse the hands that feed it. Theon frowns, unsatisfied. But it burns them just the same. Menes's eyes flicker toward him, sharp but not angry. True, he says softly, and that's why you must learn when to stop warming your hands. You glance between them. The tension hums like heat between iron and flame. You know Theon's questions aren't foolish, only dangerous. Even the wrong word spoken too loudly can catch fire in this city. Menes breaks the silence by rising to his feet. Enough thinking for one night. The order from the merchant will be ready at dawn. Stack the finished vials and pack them tight. You nod, moving to the workbench. The vials are cool to the touch, smooth and clean. Each catches the fading light differently. Some golden, some blue, some nearly invisible. You run your thumb along one and imagine it being filled with oil or perfume, then carried across the sea to some far island where no one has heard your name. Theon finishes stacking the straw and boxes, then sits near the wall. You ever notice, he says quietly, how the fire looks different when it burns at night? Like it's trying to tell you something. You glance at the furnace, still glowing faintly. Maybe it's tired. He smiles, shaking his head. No, it's awake when we sleep. Always watching. Menes chuckles from across the room. Don't give the fire a mind, boy. It's enough that it gives us light. The day we start thinking, it thinks back, we'll never rest again. He reaches for a clay cup and pours himself a little wine. Here, he says, passing it to Theon, drink, it keeps the fear quiet. Theon hesitates, then takes a sip, wincing. Bitter, like truth, Menes replies, taking the cup back. He leans against the table and looks toward the doorway. Outside, the street glows softly with torchlight. A group of men walk by, their laughter echoing down the alley. Their robes mark them as temple servants, carrying jars of oil for the evening lamps. Menes watches them go, his eyes distant. They call that holy fire, he says quietly, but every flame comes from the same place. From hunger, from wanting something more than darkness. You glance at him. You sound like Philon. He smiles faintly. Maybe I do. He finishes his drink, then sets the cup down gently. Maybe that's the danger. For a while, no one speaks. The sound of the furnace fills the silence, a low hum, almost a voice. Theon hums under his breath, tapping his fingers against his knee. You listen to the rhythm, the heartbeat of work that never ends. After some time, Menes speaks again. Historians still argue whether fire was stolen from the gods or gifted by them. He says, but I think both are true. We were given fire, and then we took more than we were meant to. He looks toward the furnace. Now it never leaves us alone. You wonder if he's talking about real fire or something else, the kind that lives behind the eyes of those who can't stop asking questions. Theon finishes packing the last crate, then wipes his hands on his tunic. If that's true, he says, then we're all thieves. Menes smiles. Good, at least you're honest thieves. He takes a long breath and straightens. Enough rest, tomorrow will be long. You lie down on your straw mat, the air thick with warmth. The furnace glows softly, a steady pulse in the dark. Theon settles near the doorway, his shadow long against the wall. You close your eyes, but sleep doesn't come right away. You hear the faint clinking of glass as the heat shifts through the workshop. Each sound feels alive, small voices speaking in a language you almost understand. You think of Philon in some dark cell, whispering to himself about light that breathes. You think of the lens in the clay box, sealed but not silent. You think of Menes sitting in the half-dark, his eyes reflecting the glow of the fire that never sleeps. Outside, the city murmurs. Somewhere far away, laughter rises and fades. A donkey brays. A wave crashes faintly against the harbor stones. Your mind drifts, pulled between the hum of the furnace and the sigh of the wind. The fire and the sea, two things that never stop moving, never stop hungering. You breathe slowly, feeling the warmth settle against your skin. The rhythm of the workshop seeps into you, the pulse of work, of fire, of patience. Theon's quiet snore drifts from the doorway, steady as the flicker of the coals. Finally, your eyes grow heavy. The world softens around the edges, shapes fading into color, sound fading into rhythm. And just before sleep takes you, you swear you see a faint shimmer of light slipping through the cracks of the clay box. A single, trembling beam that flickers once, then disappears into the dark. The city wakes with a sound like the slow inhale of a giant creature, half asleep, half dreaming. Distant gulls cry above the harbor. The clang of bronze doors echoes faintly from the temple quarter. Somewhere nearby, a woman sings to her child, a soft melody that threads through the morning air like smoke. You rise from your mat and stretch. Theon is already awake, stacking the delivery crates by the doorway. Menes stands outside, talking to a merchant. His silhouette glows faintly in the rising light. When you step into the street, the air is cool, but the promise of heat lingers. The merchant's donkey shifts restlessly, hooves scraping the stones. These are fragile, Menes says, his voice steady. Tell your men to carry them, as if they hold the bones of kings. The merchant nods nervously. They will be treated with care. He gestures to two workers, who lift the crates carefully onto the cart. Theon leans against the doorway, yawning. You think those bottles will reach Cyprus in one piece? Menes smirks. If the gods are kind and the sailors sober, you watch as the cart rattles away down the narrow lane, the sound of wood and wheel fading into the hum of morning. The workshop feels emptier without the crates. Only the faint warmth of the furnace remains, a heartbeat beneath the stillness. Menes steps inside, his expression unreadable. The lens stays here, he says. The scholar may be gone, but his question still burns. We will finish the polishing before the next moon. You nod, though part of you still wonders what good it will do. Theon whispers, what if they come looking for it? Menes doesn't turn. Then they'll find it gleaming too brightly to touch. He begins his morning ritual, checking the tools, stirring the ash, muttering prayers that sound more like instructions. You sweep the floor, slow and steady, letting the rhythm clear your thoughts. Outside, the street begins to swell with noise again. Fishmongers, priests, children, and traders all weave into the chorus. You can hear it even through the walls, like the steady tide that never ends. By midday, Menes sends you to the market for more clay jars. The potter by the olive grove, he says. Not the one near the baths. His jars crack. You set out through the winding alleys, the smell of salt and heat growing stronger. The sun gleams against the rooftops, and every sound seems sharper. You pass the same fig seller from days before. He nods at you, still humming the same tune he always does. As you turn the corner toward the market, a group of scholars walks past, robes pale in the light. They speak quickly, their words overlapping. They sealed the lower halls again. Too dangerous, they said. A scroll was missing, not destroyed, simply gone. Someone must have hidden it. You slow your pace, pretending to examine a basket of dates. The scholars' voices fade, but the words stay behind, buzzing faintly in your mind. When you reach the potter's stall, the air smells of damp earth and smoke. Rows of jars line the shelves, tall, round, slender, some painted with blue glaze, others plain. The potter himself is an old man, his fingers cracked and brown from years of work. Menes's apprentice, he says when he sees you. Still making light, are you? You smile faintly. Still trying, he chuckles. Then you're already halfway there. Patience makes better glass than heat. He helps you choose 6 sturdy jars, each thick enough to hold the furnace's water. As you pay, he leans closer and lowers his voice. Be careful what you carry back today. The city's restless. They're searching houses near the library. You pause. For what? He shrugs. For knowledge that burns. The words send a chill down your spine. You thank him, load the jars into your sling, and start back through the narrow streets. The noise feels sharper now, too loud, too close. Every shout and hammer strike rings like warning. By the time you reach the workshop, the sun has begun to tilt west. Theon looks up from the furnace as you enter. Took you long enough. You set the jars down. The city feels strange today. Menes glances up from his bench. It always feels strange when people forget how easily fire spreads. He gestures toward the lens on the table. Come, let's finish this. Theon holds the sphere steady while you polish. The light moves within it as if alive, bending, shimmering, never still. The surface grows clearer with each stroke until you can see straight through to the far wall. The furnace flame reflects inside it, a single point of gold suspended in nothing. Menes watches silently, arms crossed. That's enough, he says finally. Too much polishing and truth slips away. He lifts the sphere carefully, turning it in his hands. The firelight passes through and scatters across the ceiling. For a heartbeat, the entire room glows. Dust motes, like stars, air shimmering with color. Even Theon falls silent. Then the light fades, leaving only the faint hum of the furnace behind. Menes places the lens back in its box and closes it gently. If they come for it, he says softly, we'll say it broke in the fire. Let them chase ashes. You nod slowly, though your gaze lingers on the box. You can still feel the warmth radiating from it, faint but alive. As evening falls, you step outside. The sky is painted in gold and violet. The air smells of sea and smoke. Across the distance, the Pharos lighthouse flickers to life again, its great flame steady against the twilight. For a long moment, you stand there, watching the light reflect across the water, imagining the lens magnifying that same flame, bending it, multiplying it, perhaps even creating something new. You don't know whether Phylon was a thief, a dreamer, or something in between. But you understand now why Menes calls truth dangerous. It isn't the fire that burns. It's the need to look closer. The wind shifts, carrying the faint cry of sailors preparing their ships for night. Theon calls from inside, asking for your help with the tools. You turn back toward the workshop. The light of the furnace glows softly through the doorway, steady, alive, eternal. You step inside, closing the door behind you. The city continues to hum, unaware that in a small room near the canal, a few hands have just shaped something that might change how light itself behaves. And the night deepens, as quiet and vast as the sea. The night passes quietly, but your sleep is shallow. When you wake, the fire is already burning again, though you never heard Menes light it. The air feels different, heavier, almost watchful. Theon is nowhere to be seen. You step outside and find him by the canal, splashing water on his face. The sky above is pale grey, streaked with the first soft glow of dawn. You didn't sleep, you say quietly. He shrugs. Couldn't. The fire kept cracking all night. It sounded like it was whispering. You smile faintly. Maybe it's telling you to stop worrying. He glances toward the workshop. Or maybe it's warning us. You both stand in silence for a while, watching the ripples move across the water. The reflection of the Pharos lighthouse still shimmers faintly, its flame now little more than a ghost in the morning haze. When you return to the workshop, Menes is bent over the table again. The clay box is open, the glass sphere in his hands. He doesn't look up when you enter. It's changing, he murmurs. You move closer. The sphere looks the same, at first clear, flawless, but as the light shifts through the window, you see something strange. A faint haze swirls inside the glass, like smoke trapped in sunlight. Why is it doing that? Theon asks. Menes frowns. I don't know. He turns the glass slowly, watching the haze twist and fade. It shouldn't. You exchange glances with Theon. Maybe the oil, you say softly, or the cooling. Menes shakes his head. No, this is different. The light inside it isn't leaving. He sets the sphere down carefully. The light continues to pulse faintly, soft but steady, as though the glass itself has learned how to breathe. Historians still argue whether Alexandrian glassmakers ever discovered photoluminescence, materials that could trap and release light, but here it feels real. The glow moves faintly in rhythm, alive in its silence. Menes sits slowly, eyes still fixed on the sphere. Do not speak of this to anyone. You nod, feeling the weight of the moment settle over the room. Theon swallows hard, his eyes wide. What will you do with it? Nothing, Menes says. We let it rest. Some truths aren't meant to travel. Theon hesitates. And if the scholars come, Menes's jaw tightens. Then we hide it where the light can't follow. The rest of the day unfolds like a held breath. You work quietly, almost afraid to make noise. The furnace hums lower than usual, as though it too knows to keep its voice down. At midday, Meanies sends you to fetch bread. The streets outside are quieter than usual. Even the merchants seem subdued, their voices hushed. You pass a group of guards near the market, their bronze helmets glinting. They speak in low tones, glancing toward the library, sealed again. No one allowed in or out, some scrolls missing, talk of mirrors and fire. You quicken your pace. The bread seller hands you a small loaf, smiling faintly. Strange morning, she says. Feels like the city's holding something it can't name. You nod without replying. When you return, Theon is standing by the door, pale. They came, he whispers. Your heart jumps. Who? Scholars? 2 of them. They asked about the lens. Meanies told them it cracked during the last firing. You step inside. Meanies sits at the table again, his hands steady but his eyes dark. The clay box is gone. You freeze. Where is it? He looks up slowly. Gone. Theon blinks. Gone where? Meanies exhales through his nose. Buried deep enough that no curious eyes will find it. You glance toward the corner near the furnace. The earth, there freshly turned, still darker than the rest of the floor. Will they come back, you ask? Meanies nods once. They will. Men who fear light always come back to smother it. The room feels smaller now, as if the walls themselves are closing in. Theon sits near the furnace, staring at the coals. Do you think it was alive? He asks softly. Meanies' eyes flicker toward him. Everything that holds light is alive. The rest of the day drifts by in uneasy silence. You grind sand that won't be used. Theon sweeps a floor already clean. Meanies stares into the fire for hours, saying nothing. Outside, the noise of the city grows distant, muffled, as if Alexandria itself has drawn a curtain across the day. By dusk, the sky turns to copper. The air tastes of dust. Meanies finally stands, stretching his back. Enough, he says quietly. The fire's had its say. He walks to the doorway and looks out toward the harbor. The lighthouse flame flickers against the horizon, bright and constant. Do you know, he says softly, that the flame of Pharos has burned every night for 50 years without fail? Sailors say if it ever goes out, the sea will swallow the city. You follow his gaze. And do you believe that? Meanies smiles faintly. I believe the sea doesn't need excuses. He turns back inside. Come, eat. Tomorrow we return to ordinary work. Cups, bottles, and window panes. The kind of glass no one will chase. Theon laughs weakly. No more breathing light. Meanies shakes his head. Not in this lifetime. Later that night, after Meanies and Theon have fallen asleep, you lie awake, listening to the furnace crackle softly. The air is still. The city outside murmurs faintly. You glance toward the corner of the floor where the earth was turned. For a heartbeat, you think you see it, a faint flicker of gold under the dirt, pulsing once, then gone. You tell yourself it's only the fire's reflection. Yet, long after the flames die, that small glow lingers behind your eyes, quiet, patient, alive. The next morning arrives quietly, though the city outside sounds different, as if something unseen has shifted in the night. The gulls are silent for once. Even the market's cries begin later than usual. You wake to find Meanies already at the doorway, his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the pale light that creeps between the rooftops. He doesn't turn when you rise. The air feels heavy, he says softly. Like before a storm, you join him, following his gaze. The sky above Alexandria hangs low and grey, the sun hidden behind a film of dust. It isn't rain that threatens, it's the kind of storm that has no sound, the kind that begins in men's hearts. Theon stirs from his mat, rubbing his eyes. Are we still working today? Menes nods, slowly. Always, if the world burns, we'll still need glass to hold the ashes. He moves back toward the furnace, lighting the first flame. The smell of oil fills the air, sharp and bitter. The fire catches, spreading across the coals in soft waves. The morning passes in silence. You grind the sand, Menes tends the fire, Theon arranges the tools. Every sound feels too loud. The scrape of stone, the hiss of air through the bellows, the faint pop of coals. At midday, Menes sends Theon to fetch oil from the market. You remain behind, sweeping the floor. The room feels lighter without the others, though the furnace hums in a strange way, almost restless. You stop, broom in hand, listening. The fire seems to whisper against the walls, a low sound that rises and fades like breath. You step closer, peering into the kiln. The flames bend slightly, twisting toward the corner of the floor where Menes buried the glass. Your chest tightens. You whisper, "It's just heat." But the air shivers as if in response. You kneel down and touch the ground near the edge of the buried patch. The earth is warm, not from the fire, but from something beneath. A faint pulse, rhythmic, steady, like the slow beat of a sleeping heart. You pull your hand back quickly. Menes, he turns, eyes narrowing. What? The ground. It's warm. He sets down the tongs and walks toward you, kneeling slowly. His hand brushes the same spot. He pauses, then exhales sharply through his nose. It shouldn't be. You both stare at the earth for a long moment. The heat continues, faint but certain. Theon returns, then, breathless from his walk, holding a jar of oil. "The market's strange today," he says. "People are saying something about the library. A fire, maybe? Smoke near the harbor quarter." Menes freezes. "Fire, that's what they said." The guards sealed the steps. You look at me. His face is pale, eyes fixed on the floor. "It started," he murmurs. Theon frowns. "What has?" Menes rises slowly. "The fire they tried to bury." He looks toward the furnace, its glow flickering across his face. They couldn't keep light locked away forever. He moves to the table, grabbing his satchel. "We leave it. We leave everything." You stare at him, startled. "Leave?" He nods once. "The city will turn on its makers before it admits it's afraid. I've seen it before." You hesitate. "But the workshops can be rebuilt," he says sharply. "Mines cannot." Theon looks toward the corner where the lens lies buried. "What about it?" Menes's jaw tightens. "It will stay. If it wants to live, it will find its way out." The three of you gather what you can. Tools, scraps of cloth, a few coins. Outside, the sky has darkened further. You can see a thin plume of smoke rising beyond the rooftops toward the direction of the library. The smell of burning papyrus rides the wind. Historians still argue about what truly happened that day, whether the great library burned by accident or by decree, or many times across many years. But to those who stood in its shadow, there was no debate. They saw the smoke, heard the shouts, felt the weight of something irretrievable slipping into air. You follow Menes through the narrow streets. People rush past, carrying baskets and jars, some shouting, some silent. The sound of chaos builds like a tide. When you reach the edge of the harbor, the sea wind hits you hard, cool, sharp, alive. Menes stops near a stone wall overlooking the water. The lighthouse flame burns bright against the grey sky, its reflection trembling in the waves. He watches it for a long time, saying nothing. Finally, he murmurs, "There, that's the only fire this city will never smother." Theon rests beside him, his expression heavy. Will the library fall? Menes doesn't answer. "Every light draws its own shadow," he says softly. "Perhaps this was always meant to happen." You watch the smoke rising in the distance. For a moment, you think you can hear it. The faint crackle of burning scrolls, the voices of scholars shouting, the sound of history being rewritten by flame. Menes places a hand on your shoulder. "Listen to me," he says. "The craft doesn't end here. It never ends. You'll carry it elsewhere, every shape, every rhythm, every breath. That's how we survive." You nod slowly. "And you?" He smiles faintly. "Old men belong to their fires." Before you can speak, he turns back toward the city, his figure framed by smoke and light. "Go with him, Theon," he says, without looking back. "Keep the craft alive." You watch as he walks away, disappearing into the thickening haze. Theon grabs your arm. "Come on." You look one last time at the city, the towers, the markets, the endless hum, now drowned beneath the sound of flame. The air tastes of ash and salt. Somewhere, deep beneath the workshop floor, a small pulse of light continues to beat unseen. You turn toward the sea, following the path down to the docks. The wind carries your footsteps away. Behind you, Alexandria breathes its long, burning sigh. You do not remember leaving the harbor. Only the sound of your sandals slapping against the stone path and the long pull of wind off the sea. Theon walks ahead, silent, the hem of his tunic dark with soot. The city burns somewhere behind you, though you do not turn to see it. By the time you reach the far quarter, the smoke has thinned. The streets here are quieter, lined with low houses and olive trees. The fire has not yet touched this part of Alexandria. The air smells of salt and dust, not flame. You both stop near a small well. Theon sits on the stone rim, face pale, eyes distant. "Do you think he's alive?" he asks finally. You lower your gaze. Menes has lived longer than most fires. Maybe he'll outlast this one, too. Theon laughs once, without humor. He'd probably argue with the flames before letting them take him. You manage a faint smile, and win. The wind shifts. In the distance, the Pharos lighthouse glows steady and unbroken, its flame cutting through the haze. Even as parts of the city darken, that light remains constant. You find yourself staring at it, hypnotized by its calm. Theon follows your gaze. You think the scholars will rebuild. Maybe not soon, you say, but knowledge doesn't die. It hides. He nods slowly. Maybe that's what Menes meant. That the fire keeps moving. You sit beside him. The air feels softer now, the chaos fading behind you. For a moment, the world feels suspended, caught between ruin and renewal. As the sun begins to sink, you both find a small path that leads toward the edge of the sea. The sand is warm underfoot, the sound of the waves steady. You walk in silence for a long time, until the city is only a shadow behind you. There, near the rocks, you find an abandoned shed, little more than walls and a roof. Theon pushes the door open. Inside, The air smells faintly of oil and clay. There are broken pots, a few tools, and a half-collapsed bench. "This could work," he says quietly. "We could start again here." You nod. Menes would call it foolish. He'd still show up tomorrow to inspect it, Theon says with a weak grin. You both begin cleaning the space, moving broken shards aside, stacking what's still usable. The rhythm of work returns easily, as if the body remembers even when the mind trembles. You find a small oil lamp and light it. The flame flickers weakly at first, then steadies. Theon watches it, expression unreadable. "Strange," he says softly. "The light looks smaller here, but it feels stronger." You don't answer. You just watch the flame, how it reflects against the shards of glass scattered across the floor. Each fragment catches it differently, bending, multiplying, softening. 100 tiny fires from one. That night, you sit together outside the shed. The sea glows under the moonlight, quiet and endless. You can still see faint traces of smoke rising from the heart of the city, but even that seems to fade into the stars. Theon speaks again, his voice low. "Do you ever wonder what became of the glass?" You pause, the lens. He nods. You think of the faint warmth that pulsed beneath the floor, the glow that seemed to breathe. "I think it's still there," you say softly. "Maybe not where we left it, but somewhere. Maybe it learned how to travel." He laughs under his breath. "You sound like him." "Good," you say. "Someone has to." Silence stretches again, but it feels gentler now. The world beyond the firelight hums, the sound of crickets, the distant rush of the tide. You close your eyes, breathing the salt air, feeling the faint sting of ash still clinging to your skin. Theon lies back on the sand, his voice barely above a whisper. "Historians will argue about what burned today. They always do," you reply, "and they'll get it wrong." He turns his head toward you. "How do you know?" "Because the fire isn't the story," you say. "It's what comes after." Theon smiles faintly, eyes half closed. "Then tell it right when they ask." "I will." The night deepens. The fire in the lamp burns lower, then steadies once more, a small golden circle against the dark. The sea hums quietly, steady as breathing. You watch the horizon until your vision blurs, until light and water become one slow, endless motion. Somewhere behind your closed eyes, you see it again, the sphere, still glowing. Its light folding softly inward and outward, as if waiting to be found again by other hands, in another age. You let the thought drift, slow and quiet, into the rhythm of the waves. The sea has a sound that never stops. Even as the city sleeps, even as the last fire burns itself into silence, the water moves, slow and patient. It rolls against the sand, then pulls away, again and again, like breathing. You sit with that sound, letting it smooth out the noise that lingers in your mind. The crackle of the furnace, the shouting of the market, the voices of scholars, all of it drifts away now, faded into distance. What remains is quieter, softer, the rhythm of the tide, the whisper of wind through the reeds, the faint creak of the boat ropes at the shore. You close your eyes. The sand beneath you is warm, the air cool against your face. Every muscle in your body begins to loosen. The breath slows, the chest rises and falls, easy and light. Somewhere far behind, the lighthouse flame still glows, steady as thought. The world may change, the city may crumble, but light always finds its way through the cracks. You imagine it touching your skin, gentle and golden, until all edges blur, and every thought becomes calm and quiet. Theon's breathing deepens beside you. The sound of the waves grows softer still, like the hum of a memory. In the distance, Alexandria rests. The fire is gone. The glass has cooled. The hands that shaped it sleep. And now, so do you,